Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm Abby Monroe, the Nonprofit Connection Director at the United Way of Northern Utah. I'm excited to welcome you all to this morning's virtual training. We have Bethany with us today, who is going to share some strategies on building a happy and productive team. I know we all need that. I know we've got a lot of goals this year for the new year, so a special thank you to Bethany for sharing her expertise with us today. This session will provide you with knowledge and tools to be more confident in putting strategies together to help you build an amazing team. The knowledge that you acquire today will enhance the capability and help to foster a stronger and more impactful nonprofit sector. So let's make the most out of this opportunity this morning to learn and collaborate and collectively make a difference. So thank you so much for being part of this initiative. I hope you find value through this, and we'll go ahead and turn over the time to Bethany to introduce herself and help us build the best teams possible. Thank you, Bethany.
Thank you so much, Abby. I'm so excited to be here. I'm a little nervous, but very, very excited to talk about one of my favorite things. So we'll just go ahead and jump right into it. So we're going to be talking about strategies for building happy and productive teams, as Abby had mentioned. But first, I want to get my screen going. So give me just a second. Okay, so this one over. Okay, so everybody can see this screen, right? We're good. Okay, awesome. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is just introduce myself and let you guys know in advance that I'm a very visual person, so there will be a lot of visuals here. Um, I I want to, before I start talking about me though, I would love to have you guys just drop a note into the chat and just tell me anything you want me to know about you for this presentation, whether it's work related, something you're hoping to learn, or if you're like, hey, I love Jeeps or whatever. I would just love to, I'm pretty interactive, so I would love to just know a little bit about you. So I'll give you guys just a couple minutes to do that while I tell you a little bit more about me. I'm trying to move things around here. Let me see. Okay, that's better. Now I can see you guys too. Okay, so I'm an outdoor nature girl with passion for building businesses and teams. I lived in Ogden for 15 years before moving to Bear Lake, and I super love the community and the small business spirit that is encapsulated in Ogden. I think Ogden is honestly one of the greatest places I've ever lived, and I miss it a lot. And so I I love everything about Ogden. I think it's a great community. I think that the small business and the nonprofit sector are really, really powerful in this. I always thought of Ogden as like a small town with like all of the amenities. So it definitely feels small, but it's big enough to feel like you're in a city. Um, and anyway, I love Ogden, and I'm so happy to be a part of it still. So I knew early on in my work life that I wasn't built like most people. It took me a while to learn that I'm really simply just not cut out to work for a large organization, but I did learn what kind of organization I wanted to build. So it was really impactful for me. I started right out of high school working in healthcare, and I worked in healthcare for several years before starting my first business in 2009. Um, I started I started Live Natural in 2009, which is still my parent company today. I started out selling natural supplements as a contractor for a local company, but I struggled to build a following. And from there, I worked for a couple of MLMs before realizing those weren't for me. And it wasn't until 2014 that I started my first successful business called Hippie Skin. Um, I learned so much when I created this company. I tell people too, if you really want to understand business and how business works, start with a products company. You'll learn everything you need to know. So this basically created a groundwork for me to copy and paste for each subsequent business that I built. And as part of that, I joined the Junior League in 2015 as the Oasis chair, and I learned even more. I credit so much of my success to the things that I learned in junior league, learning how to host meetings, learning how to talk in front of people, learning how to run projects and build friendships. And Abby is one of those. So I'm really grateful that I got to meet Abby through the junior league. The greatest thing that I think about junior league was it gave me a place for my ideas. I remember working for larger organizations when I first started my career, and I struggled because I had a lot of ideas and I was just like at the bottom of the chain, like I didn't feel like I was heard, and it was really hard to progress in an environment like that. So I loved being a part of junior league because I'm very altruistic by nature, and I loved having a place for my ideas. JLo Gives, which is pictured over here. This was our initial presentation, me and Kelly Barkema. We came up with the concept of JLo Gives, which is similar to a giving circle. And that's one of my favorite accomplishments that I had during the junior league. I don't know if they're still doing it, but it went on for a few years. So it was pretty exciting to see how that impacted the community. My first company, Hippie Skin, also won an Indie Ogden Award the same year that Junior League did, and that's this picture down here. So I really do credit and believe that JLo had so much to do with that. And it's through these experiences that I became passionate about building teams. So just a quick little run through. This is me and my husband and our two puppies, and we love being outdoors and traveling and doing all the things. I'm also a Jeep girl, so yeah, super love that. And I actually have a question for you, Abby. I can't see the chat. Is there a way that I can pull that up in my little box? Because I would love to see what you guys have to say.
Yeah, how do I allow you to see that?
It won't let me expand this. So anyway, if you figure that out, let me know, because I can't see what people are saying.
Okay. I don't see a way to share it with you. Most of them are sharing what organizations they're with.
Okay.
Celeste said she's the executive director, author, mom, grandma, and love all things outdoor.
Ooh, love it. Awesome. Thank you. Okay, maybe you can just be my translator when I go between. That'd be
Okay,
great.
for sure.
Awesome. Okay. So after my first year in the junior league, members started asking me how my team was so effective. And truth be told, I was convinced it was luck. I don't know if you all know Janie Nadolski. She was the president the year that I joined, and I really think she was a great coach. So maybe it was all her. But as my second and third year rolled around, I did realize a couple of things after watching other women in the league. I love this quote here. I feel like it's so poignant in describing really what it means to have a successful team. And it just says it is literally true that you can succeed best and quickest by helping others to succeed. And I truly believe that. And that's one of the things that I observed and learned as I observed women in the league. So the things that I learned, number one, I was truly interested in helping my team succeed. I don't think that there's many people out there that don't feel this way. I really think that we get into management positions and being leaders and creating teams because we want to see our team succeed. So that was something that I observed is everybody wants everyone to succeed. That's usually a no-brainer, right? So the second thing that I learned, and this is probably one of the hardest ones, especially for women, is to delegate. And I put it 3 times because it's really important. Delegate, delegate, delegate. Learning early on that delegation is key really, really helped me. And I mean, I really kind of credit a lot of this to, there's a lot of women in here, so I think it's easy for us to really understand how difficult that is because we are nurturers by nature. We want to come in and swoop in and clean up and fix everything. And we have to learn to take a step back from that and to be able to delegate. Number 3 was it's super hard to accept failure. And this is the number 1 reason I think that most teams don't succeed. If you can't accept failure, you're not going to grow. And I think that even on the flip side of this too, if you don't know how to delegate and you're not doing those things, you're probably still going to fail. And so if you're doing the delegation and you still fail, well, at least you know that you are taking the right path, right? So really, I used to think of myself as the captain of a ship, and my job as a team leader was to make sure that everyone knew their assignments. And I wasn't there to do everything. My job as the leader was to offer assistance where necessary. And I think that that's a really big piece. We used to get caught up in, I mean, I even got caught up in the league as okay, well, my team is MIA. I haven't heard from them. I don't know what's going on. So I'm just going to take this on and I'm going to do it myself. And that leads to burnout. And I think especially in in the nonprofit sector, you guys probably experience this a lot too, is if you don't do it, it's not going to get done, right? And so I think learning to take a step back from that and saying, you know what, if I don't do it, it's not going to get done and we're going to fail. And at the end of the day, yeah, like it doesn't get done and you failed, but at least you know that you were holding your own boundary and that you were respecting you and that you were being a true leader. I think the very definition of a leader is someone who leads, not someone who does all the things. So when it all fails, it does come back on you. But as the leader, I think that's the choice that you have to make. You need to be okay with letting people fail because it's how they learn. I would honestly much rather my team fail trying than to not have tried it out at all and just let me do everything for them. And I think this is hands down the hardest thing about building a team and being a leader. But the incredible piece of this is that your team will quickly realize that if you have their backs when they fail, they'll be inspired to succeed and they'll amaze you with what they're capable of. So I've broken down
This
this.
is Katie.
Was there a question? We're good. Okay. So I've broken down this presentation into 3 different strategies for building teams. The first one is recruiting, and then building and retaining. And like I said, I'm kind of visual. So there's a couple, my teams are very fluid over the years, but these are just a couple team photos that you'll see sprinkled in throughout the remainder of the presentation. We have a lot of fun. We have a lot of adventures, and I'm super grateful for everyone that I've ever had the opportunity and pleasure to work with. I really like this quote. And I think that it really kind of elaborates on how we need to be presenting ourselves in order to recruit the right talent. It says, your brand attracts talent and encourages collaboration. It signals to the world who and what you want to attract. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in the next slide. And again, very visual here. So when you're looking at recruiting the right talent, you really want to be thinking about your brand story and presence. 3 main questions there. Who are you? What is your mission? And who is your audience? Back in early 2019, I put out a hiring call for Hippie Skin. It wasn't the first position I'd ever hired for, but I was shocked by the turnout. I had 15 well-qualified applicants within the first 24 hours, and I had to close the listing as more just kept coming in. I was blown away. But when I asked each one of these interviewees, they said they loved my brand, my mission, and my story, and that it was something that they wanted to be a part of. They loved how real we were in our presence and how committed we were to natural ingredients. So that tells me that I was giving off a good presence for my brand, that people wanted to come work for me because they believed in what I was doing. I was attracting talent based off my presence. And a couple ways that I was doing that is I was showing behind the scenes. What does it look like every day to work at Hippie Skin? I was also highlighting the daily life of being an entrepreneur, our challenges, our struggles, our wins, our losses, and really just kind of overall showing who we are or who we were as a team and a business. I think another really cool example of this is goal. And I think that's also where I mean, how I first interacted with Abby. But you guys, like, I was tempted to work for Goal because their brand presence was that good. And they were so good at like telling their story and showing who they are and what they do. And I was like, I got these businesses over here, but like, I'm kind of tempted to go work for them. And that was blowing my mind a little bit too, because I was like, they have a really good culture. And so I think building up a good brand culture and just kind of being able to show that to people when the time comes for you to hire or build a team or recruit, you're going to be attracting the people that resonate the most with what you're trying to do. So I want you guys to take just a couple of moments and maybe take some notes or write down who are you and what is your mission and who is your audience. Just take a moment to kind of think about these things. And if you want to, you can write them down. Really just looking at, can you answer these questions about your organization? I'll give you guys a few moments there. And if you have questions, feel free. Give you guys about another minute. Just finish up any thoughts you might be having. All right. Does anybody want to share anything that they are thinking about? All right, we can move on. All right. So it's not just about your brand presence. It's about, oh, did somebody have a question? No, okay. I think that building a foundation of fun is really important. I do believe that there's a space for seriousness, but I think there's a lot more space for fun. I think if we feel free and open to express ourselves, then more creativity stems from that. So having fun together also creates connection and bonds. And I think that showing the world your silly side shows them that you're real. I mean, if you're not a silly person, don't be silly. But if you're a silly person, be silly. So I think that finding fun in the everyday work and highlighting achievements, even if they feel small, is really important. Like maybe you finally got something to work that you've been working on forever, even if it's just like your computer, you know, like, hey, I was actually productive today. Like that's a win. And so I really take the time to encourage my team members' personalities and be genuinely excited for them. I think it's so important to really just be genuine more than anything in how you interact with your team. I love these photos because these are some of just the silliness showing. I love this end of trail one. This is it just shows us like going past the trail. I mean, I know that's naughty, but it was just funny because she just stopped and looked back at me like, well, so really just allowing your team to be silly together and to show their personalities, I think, and really encourage that, they're going to feel a lot safer to be authentic in how they interact with you, if you're authentic in how you present yourself. And that gets you noticed. On the flip side, I think it's important to be real in your failures as well. I'm sorry that he's so pixelated. I grabbed this off the internet and it's really hard to read, but I will read it to you. I love this quote by JFK. It says, "Leadership and learning are indispensable to each other." And I think that's really important because failure is unavoidable and it's incredibly common. And I think that in our society, we're taught to really just focus on the positive and we don't really embrace the negative. And I think that transfers to work as well. So I'm always looking for ways that I can learn from failure. And I tell all of my team members, I actually even had this in my employee paperwork, is that I want them to fail. I would much rather have them try and fail than to not try at all. And so we celebrate the failures too. And we take an opportunity to learn from them. So this photo on the right, it makes me laugh every time I see it because this is me and my little yoga retreat team, my very first team, after we hosted our very first yoga retreat. And we were celebrating the fact that we made zero money. And we were just like, yes, we pulled this off. Let's celebrate. Let's toast. And it was really, I mean, you can see the excitement in our faces. Like we were exhausted. This was after everybody left. We were like, what just happened, you know? And I took a moment. I said, you know what? We need to celebrate this because this is a really big achievement that the three of us put together. And then we came together and we were just excited. We were very excited about it. Obviously, making money is the goal, right? Like we want to make money. So celebrating that multiple times would probably be crazy. But there was another experience with the same two team members. I think it was actually the following year where we were hosting a retreat and I had to leave the middle. We were out at the San Rafael Swell. I don't know if you guys have been out there, but it's a very long dirt road. And as we got out there and we're starting our activities, I realized I was in trouble health-wise and I needed to get to an emergency room. And I delegated tasks and I left. I left the middle of this retreat and I didn't come back. And so these two had to sort of just pick up the slack and move on. And they did a great job. They made it through the end of the retreat. And when I met up with them, it was interesting because there was blame being thrown around, right? How many of you have ever been in a situation where your team failed and it immediately goes to blame? Anybody? Raise some hands. Yeah, we're familiar with this concept, right? And so instead of telling them, hey guys, that's not the right way to do this, I stepped in and I said, look, I left you guys on your own. I did not prepare you well enough to know what to do in this situation. And I 100% accept the blame for that. And what can we learn from this situation? And I just, and from that, we laid out a groundwork. Okay, future retreats, we all know exactly what trails we're taking. We know exactly where we're going, and we know exactly what to do if one of us can't be there, right? So we learned how to work together more cohesively and plan better to be able to avoid that in the future. And it was really interesting to watch just the change in these two women as we took that. And it was like, yeah, this was kind of a failure, you guys. Like, it's okay though. We made it through. You guys did great. And to watch them shift from blaming to the next time we failed, they said, okay, what can we learn? Was really, really powerful. And I really think that it's so important to embrace failure and to accept responsibility and to try to learn from it and to embrace it, essentially. I mean, I think applying learning to the future and just to keep growing and keep trying. And this is one of the biggest things that inspires teams. So I want you guys to, I know I'm one of those people that's like, I want you to think about this. So I want you guys to think about a time that your team failed, and think about how it was handled. Was it a positive experience or was it a negative experience? And then did you learn from it and apply changes, or did you give up? So just kind of keep that in mind as we move on. If you want to jot down any notes, you're welcome. All right. So I learned this concept at LNU. I think Abby was there, right? Yes, yes. So Leadership Northern Utah was really awesome. And I learned this concept there, and I think I learned a bunch of other stuff there, but this is probably the concept that I use the most and that has helped me the most. And so I think it's probably the most important lesson I have ever learned when it comes to leadership and hiring. So compliments over competition. What that means is you need to know your team's strengths and you need to identify your team weaknesses. And if it's just like a tiny team of you and another person, you need to know what your strengths and weaknesses are and what theirs are. And when you're hiring people or building a team, you want to be bridging gaps in your weaker areas so that talent will fill in and round out your team. So one thing that I used to do is I always wanted to hire someone who was just like me, because I'm a go-getter. I get things done. I'm organized. I'm a little bit type A, but not all the way. And so it's just kind of like you want to hire somebody that's like you, right? Because we always talk about how we want a clone, right? We want somebody who's just like us that'll do all the things. But what happens is when you hire people who are just like you're creating a competitive environment. I have an example of this. Back in that same 2019 hire, I had so many people to choose from and so many qualified people. And there was this one girl that I was just like, wow, we really vibe well. Like, she's got all the experience. She seems really organized. She's a go-getter. She's got lots of ideas. She's perfect, right? And so I hired her, and it was basically trouble from the start. The problem is that she was too much like me. And so we were butting heads a lot. And I kept trying to support her and her ideas and all these different things. But the problem is that she wanted to be me. And so it didn't work in a team setting. Right. So, and I'm not saying that people can't be like you. If somebody wants to be the boss, like, that's great. Let them be the boss. Show them how to be the boss. But if they're just like you're not going to be very effective because you're both trying to do the same things. And so if you're hiring to fill in your weaknesses, it can be super uncomfortable. This is probably one of the most counterintuitive things that I do when I'm building a team, is to hire people who aren't like me. But it really works. It's absolutely crazy to watch. Just how a team that's different comes together, right? So it does require a learning curve to understand how they need to be led. But once you do it, it works every time. I had a manager who struggled, right? Like, she is more than qualified. She's not like me. And it was so interesting because I would say, okay, here's what needs to be done. And it wouldn't get done. And I was like, I know she can do it. So, like, what's the problem here? And then I was I was actually going back through my LNU paperwork, and I was looking at the different personality types. And I realized she might just need to be given a written list. And then in my head, I was like, no, it's not that simple. There's no way it's that simple. But I gave her a written list, and every single item was done before the end of the week. It was crazy. So it's just taking the time to really understand how they need to be led can be super helpful for you in building a well-rounded team. I think that John C. Maxwell said it a lot more eloquently than I did. And he said, to collaborative team members, completing one another is more important than competing with one another. And I love that because I think it's so true. Does anybody have any questions on that? All right, so now that we've covered the recruiting aspect, let's move on to building. I promise I'm not silly all the time. I feel like I chose all of the photos where I'm being completely silly, but I think that knowing your team is essential and knowing their interests, their family, their strengths, communication styles, all of these things, the more you can do here, the more you're going to inspire your team. I love knowing the interests of each one of these people. I can look at every single one in this photo and know what their interests are. And it doesn't have to be big, you guys. Like one of them has chickens and she's like in love with her chickens and how much they produce. Like she'll give me a weekly report on how many eggs they're producing. And it's great because I'm like, that's an easy thing for me. I can say, hey, how are your chickens? You know, and it just shows her that I'm interested and that I'm paying attention and that I'm genuinely interested in the things that she's interested in. And it helps to build that bond, right? So it's all about creating trust and helping people feel like they're making a difference and that they're being heard. I think that knowing the family situation is a great way to help people feel valued. I had an unwritten policy when I had my studio in Ogden that kids were always welcome in the studio. And you guys, that was hard. It can be really challenging to have young kids running around a studio, right? But it was a little thing that made a huge impact for at least one of my employees, and she's still with me to this day. So whenever it was really challenging, I just kind of thought about like the benefit was so much greater than my suffering in the moment, you know? And so yeah, maybe we didn't get as much done that day and maybe we weren't as productive, but she knows that she has a place that she can work where her kids are welcome. And that was a big deal to her. Another thing that you can do is understand the strengths of your team and give them assignments that hone in on those while challenging them to build new ones. A couple of my retreat managers had done a couple retreats with me, and I love it. I super love it when my team comes to me with ideas because that means that they're maybe ready to like build their own project, right? And so I encouraged them. I said, hey, like this retreat idea is great. Like, why don't you two take it and run with it? Like, I will support you and whatever you need, but you know the framework, you know what to do, you know how to market, you know how to build it. So I want you two to do that. And it gave them so much empowerment to have that control and to understand that, wow, she's like, she trusts us to do this. And then they did it and they felt it was so cool to see them grow. And I think that's like one of my favorite things is when you really can understand what their strengths are and you say, okay, like I trust you, you can do this. It gives them so much more empowerment to be able to take on more challenging projects. And then again, just learning communication styles early and utilizing them always. And listening, I think, is a big piece of that. Just being able to listen. If somebody comes to you with a problem, it's really important to just listen to what they have to say because chances are they've been hemming and hawing about whether or not to even come to you in the first place because it's really uncomfortable to talk about the uncomfortable things, right? Like we've kind of talked about that. We want to focus on the positive and not always the negative. And it can be hard as a leader too to hear the negative. But it's really important to be able to listen to your team and help them, offer them solutions. And sometimes it all they need is you to just listen, you know? So one of the things that I use with my husband, I told him early on in our relationship, I said, hey, when I'm coming to you, I don't always need you to solve the problem for me. Sometimes I just need you to listen. And so I guess he's been passing on that advice for years to other people. Like you don't always need to solve the problem. Or you can simply ask them, hey, do you need me to solve a problem or do you need me to just listen? And that gives them so much more trust in you and the ability to come to you next time too. So listening is huge. And I love being an active part of my team's goals. Whether they are wanting to host a workshop or give a speech or learn a new talent, it's really important to me to always support them in those things, even if it means that they might leave your organization because they've gotten so big and wonderful. They'll they'll never forget you for supporting their dreams. And I think that that's really important. And obviously we want to retain people, but not everybody's going to stay forever. And I think that it's really important to help people grow. All of these things lead to inspiration, right? The best thing you can do for your team is to inspire them. If they feel inspired, they'll set goals, they'll challenge themselves, they'll work hard, and they'll drive themselves to new heights. So be the inspiration. And we're gonna talk a little bit next about action and how you can inspire your team through action. So retaining your team, you want to keep it going strong. This gets into a little bit more of like those things that I don't know if you guys are the same as me, but like I don't love monthly meetings. I just feel like they're so tedious. And honestly, it's not that I don't love them. I don't like creating agendas and like scheduling and making sure everybody's there. Like that's the part I don't like, but I love the actual, once we get there and we're doing it, it's great. And it's so important. Regularly checking in with your team just continues that inspiration drive, right? It gives them energy and it gives them focus for the upcoming weeks. And so I always, I give myself permission here if I need to keep it simple due to time constraints or lack of activity since the last meeting, I honestly am fine with just doing like a quick check-in. And I love check-ins, right? So my favorite thing to ask a team member is what's working and what's not working. And they might be a little shy at first if you're just implementing this. But if you lead by example and throw yourself under the bus, they'll follow. And so I like to be able to give them the opportunity to say, hey, like this thing really worked. Like that last retreat was amazing. We had great turnout. I really felt connected to the participants, but our food definitely like could have been better, right? So that gives them the opportunity to voice like what they're feeling in a supportive environment. And you can say, yeah, I hear you. Like the food definitely needs to like step it up. So what can we learn from that? And how can we grow moving forward? So it kind of just lets you know where their mindset is, what they're working on, and what you can do to effectively support or coach them. So what's working and what's not working. And really you can structure meetings however you'd like or however your organization prefers. But I really think that the check-in is so essential. Even if it's like a weekly check-in. I mean, depending on how big your teams are and how many projects you're working on, a daily check-in. Hey, what's working today? What's not working? And that gives you the knowledge to sort of like make those changes as the leader that you are, right? You have the ability to change their work environment if that's not working for them. If it's something you can do, then, I mean, your job is to be there to coach them and to lead them and to inspire them. I do monthly meetings. I feel like they give my team direction and it also gives them some purpose, right? And then it gives them tasks that they can work on or complete prior to the next one. And it really just kind of ensures that your organization is a well-oiled ship. So remembering that, captain, this is your time to make sure your team is on track and knows what to do. I always like think of like a captain standing at the helm of a ship, like barking out orders, you know? And like I do that, but I'm a little bit nicer. I'm like, hey, you know where you need to be? Like that's kind of how I think about like leading a team. And so I really just think it's kind of important to make sure that you're checking in regularly, whatever that looks like for your organization. It just needs to be consistent. Shout outs
Bethany,
are one of my favorite. Oh, yes.
we have a question.
Yes.
Celeste is wondering why monthly and not more frequently.
I honestly think it just depends on your team size. So and it might depend on your organization. For me, my teams are really small and we usually meet monthly on our, like when our during our slow months, and then we'll meet more often when we're in retreat. Like, so for my yoga retreats, they typically happen from April to October. So right now we're just in our planning stages and we're doing monthly meetups so that we can make sure that everybody's doing what they need to be doing in order to plan those effectively, and really like hitting on marketing and stuff. But once we get closer, we're going to have more like weekly meetings. just to make sure that we're on track with what needs to happen and everything like that. Does that answer your question? I think it's just kind of like a size and project thing. Any other questions? Okay, awesome. All right, shout outs are my favorite. Is anybody currently doing shout outs with their teams? I can't see you raise your hand, so we'll just say yes. Okay, shout outs are one of my favorite things. And I think that it's when I was working in larger organizations, like they never happened. And it was always like, do you know, you could like boost your morale so easy just by doing a quick shout out. So during my meetings, I shout out a member or like a team member or members who have done well. I highlight exactly what they've done and thank them for being awesome. That's pretty much it. I'm just like, hey, you killed it on social media last week. Like, well done. And calling them out in front of everybody else makes them feel like what they're doing is important. It makes them feel like we're noticing, like you can see what they're doing and that their efforts are being recognized. They're so important, so easy, and kind of overlooked. So it's kind of cool too, because I think the regular shout outs lead to a culture of looking for ways to praise. Recently, one of my managers put in a blank line on our agenda under shout outs so that she could shout me out during the meeting. And it was so unexpected, but so wonderful to see her utilizing this tool because she was one that sort of was like kind of shy at first and like never really talked about things and never was afraid to act. And so it was kind of cool to see that transition in her and being able to say, hey, I notice what you're doing and I want to shout you out. And of course you don't need to wait for a meeting. You can shout people out anytime, anywhere. If you see something awesome, say something. It's pretty simple. There's never really a bad time for praise. And then we'll talk about yearly retreats on the next slide. But yeah, just regular and consistent check-ins empower you as a leader, as well as your team, letting them know that you're engaged and genuinely interested. So I think that's one of the most important things there. All right, retaining your team, last one, the yearly retreats. I love yearly retreats. Have you ever heard anybody say that? I don't know. Does everybody love them or is it just me? Like I get so excited about yearly retreats. I think that there's a couple of pieces to this that make it fun and maybe why I like it so much. This is something that I actually learned through the Junior League. I think it's incredibly powerful and it's fun. So annual retreats give your team a sense of ownership in what your organization is trying to do. So this is more of like a broad look at the organization. And you can choose whatever information you want to share, but I think that it helps keep your team invested. And so the first thing I would say is you've got to try to gather for at least a full day. I usually do like an overnight retreat. Sometimes we'll do a little bit longer, but I think like an overnight is plenty. If people are busy, you don't want to be like taking them away from their families. So I usually do like an overnight and then I will plan in something fun. So whatever you do, make sure there's fun. That's going to ensure that people come and that they're going to be excited about what you're doing. So last year, my team did an overnighter in Bear Lake with a snowshoe activity and we had a blast. So this is us on our little snowshoe hike up in Bear Lake after we had done our retreat activities. So the key areas that you want to focus on are listed up here. So I usually do a year in review, and that's what went right and what didn't. You sensing a theme here? Like what's working, what's not working? We take a look at that. We celebrate our accomplishments and take the opportunity to discuss what didn't go well and how we're going to apply that to the following year. I like to include numbers with mine. So I'll say, I mean, you can break it down by quarter. You can look at like over the whole year. If you don't feel comfortable sharing numbers, you can work in percentages and say, hey, our growth was X% year over year. Just give them something that shows that the organization is moving forward. And if it's stagnant, that's a great opportunity to talk about that as well. So what projects worked, what ones didn't, just really taking the opportunity to break that down in your year in review. And then the brand compass is something I'm going to include a copy of it on the next page. I don't remember where I got the brand compass. Has anybody heard of this before? All right, so this is cool. I think you guys are going to love it because I really love it. It has been instrumental in shaping how our team grows and changes and how our brand is presented. It identifies who we are and it helps us stay on track with our goals. So I've included a copy of ours on the next page that we can go over. So we'll kind of come back to that. The activities for bonding, like I said, you can just do something fun. It doesn't have to be fancy. You can just have like a nice big dinner together where you don't talk about work. The most important piece of the fun piece is that you're not talking about work. This is a time for you to just have fun and bond as a team. So you can go hiking, you can go boating, snowshoeing, really anything that's fun, right? And it doesn't have to cost a lot. Most of the times our team just appreciates being together because we all work together during the year. We love it, but we don't get to just step outside of that, right? And just be who we are and talk about whatever it is we want to talk about, our families, our kids, whatever. So my team looks forward.
Do you need some cough syrup or anything?
My team looks forward to the goal setting piece each year. We make goals as a team and then personally too. So I've had them ask me for this and make sure that I'm including it on my agenda every time. So I'll include those worksheets too as a reference. It really can be simple. You can be broad about it. It doesn't really matter. And then always more shout outs, always more shout outs. There's always room for shout outs. So basically, annual retreats invigorate us as a team, right? They get us excited for the coming year, and then they allow us to cover important tasks in one setting. So I think that they're really important. I'll show you my brand compass on the next page. This is one that we did, and I'm sorry, I couldn't figure out how to attach a PDF, but I can do that, I think, in a minute. So I tried to bold the different areas. So it's a place where you can you can do this with your team, or you can do this at a higher level management, whatever things look like for your organization. But we try to focus on a clear, concise one-line statement that represents our goal. That's our mission, right? So we work on that as a team, and then we put in our answer. And then we go through vision. Where are we going? Who will we be? Our values, things we will not compromise on. Position, where are we in the market? Who are our top 3 competitors? I think knowing who your competitors are is huge, because then you know exactly where you are in the market, and you know what they're going after and what you're going after, right? Knowing that is really helpful in building your brand strategy. So we look at our target market. Who are we after? Who do we want? What do they look like? What do they do? So you're creating your little avatars of who you're marketing to. Pricing model. What is our PM? What's the lowest we're willing to accept at any time? Why is our product different? And where do we live? Simple. Where are we? And then promotions. Where do we spend our advertising dollars? Working on these things, and we review it once a year because it's so important to just know who you are, and that your team knows who you are, and how you're representing yourself, and who your competitors are, and what you're trying to accomplish, right? So this is a really powerful tool. And I think I can attach that, maybe not in presentation mode, but I will attach that so you guys can download it and then just delete all my answers and put yours in if you want a worksheet. This is our goals. This is, again, it's kind of hard to see, but I found this graphic probably 15 years ago and really liked it because it offers 5 different areas for goal setting, and then how to work on those goals. So it gives you a how, a when, a target, and now, so where you're starting from and where you want to be. And I don't know if you can see these very well, but there's 5 different areas. There's people, personal growth, health, career. Oh, and one of them got cut out. I think that would be finance. Yeah, so it's health, wealth, people, growth, and career. And so you can make goals in those different areas. And I like to do this with my teams, as well as I'll give them a worksheet to do this on their own too. So they can set their own personal goals, but then we do team goals as well. Okay, any questions for me? I'm gonna stop sharing so that I can see the chat, or you guys are welcome to just like ask me anything. Let's see, where do I stop sharing? Oh, it's over here. Oh, I just found the chat. It was on a different, my goodness. Okay, cool. I'm gonna put up my last slide. It's got my contact information on it. So if you guys want to check out some of the things that I've been doing, I put my websites down there. So I do have 3 businesses. I have the skincare business, which I currently own, but it's being run by somebody else. And then I have healyogastudio.com, which is we do yoga retreats throughout the state of Utah. And I'm also a photographer, so glowhophoto.com. That one sort of came out of me being creative and also not wanting to hire photographers for my other 2 businesses because it took too long. So that's how that all came to be. But I absolutely love what I do, and I love building teams and expanding and creating. So let me see how I can do the handouts. What do you
Bethany,
do when you're
if you want to share the slides with me, I'd be happy to email them out to all of the attendants.
Perfect. Okay, yeah, let's do that.
Okay. And it looks like
Okay.
you've got another question from Kenton in the chat.
Yes. So what do you do when you're trying to facilitate a discussion with team members and they aren't responding? I think that that's a really hard one, and that's one that a lot of people, and me included, have faced. And I think that it kind of goes back to building your foundation. If they are not responding, then they're not engaged. They don't trust or see the vision. And so it can be really difficult because at that point you're trying to save it rather than build it. And so I would recommend trying to connect with your team members on a non-professional level. Maybe try scheduling a team party or host something at your house where you guys don't talk about work. You just get together, get to know each other. You have like a potluck or something, or, just something simple that gets you all together so that you can bond. I saw this a lot in the junior league and I experienced it myself. And it's really difficult when you're trying to engage people who are not engaged. And yeah, I think it just kind of goes back to like, you've got to build a foundation. If that foundation's not there, it's going to be really, really hard to get them engaged. Is that helpful? No problem. Any other questions? You guys can talk at me too. Thank you, Amanda. I'm glad it was helpful.
If there are no other questions for Bethany, I just want to it looks like, how can you incorporate this with volunteers? Do you want to go ahead with that one, Bethany?
Yeah. So I mean, really, it's all pretty much the same. I actually learned a lot of this when I was working in the junior league, which is 100% volunteer based. And so it kind of just goes back to your team has to feel engaged. I think that's probably the biggest thing. And I think in volunteer organizations, it's typical to get caught up in the big picture, right? So when you have volunteers and they're all coming together, they're there for a reason. You just have to remember what that reason is, right? Or you have to know what that reason is. With Junior League, a lot of women joined because they wanted to volunteer and they want to get to know other women, right? So like those are the two biggest things. So every year when I had a new team, the first thing I would do is I would set up a welcome party at my house where I would just have like appetizers and we'd have cocktails or whatever. And we just kind of just, I got to know them. And I would always ask them, why are you here? And what do you want to accomplish? And I think that the worst thing that you can do is assume that you know why they're there, because it's going to be a little bit different for everybody. And it's really important that you know what inspires your team, what's going to keep them the most engaged. So say somebody gets into, we're going to use the junior league as an example. They get into it because they want to get to know other women, but they also want to give back to the community, right? And a lot of times, the getting to know other women is a stronger piece of that. And so having that meeting where we get to know each other as a team and we kind of just get to sit around and chat and like get to know each other, that builds a really solid foundation. So then when it's time to get to work, they're actually going to show up because they feel like they've been heard, they feel like they've been valued, and they are excited to get working and to give back to the community. So I think that it's really important to build the relationship piece in your team. And it goes back to that previous slide where it's like getting to know their interests and their family situation, how they communicate. Those are all really important things to cover in that first meeting when you're first getting to know them. And if it's an existing team and you're adding people into it, you can still do the same thing. Maybe you host like and it just depends on the size here, but you could do like a once a year, you could do once a month, just a little social where you get together and we're not talking about work, we're just getting to know each other. I think in a volunteer organization, especially, that's really helpful. And yeah, with the revolving volunteers. So hopefully I kind of just touched on that where they're always changing. And I don't know if you guys want to give me more information about like how often those volunteers are revolving, that might be a little bit more helpful. But for me, I always had a new team once a year. And so it was really important to make sure that I was just building those connections. And even if you do, oh, daily. Okay. Yeah. So that one's a little bit more tricky and it really, so tell me a little bit more, like, are they just like a one and done, or like they come on daily and they stay for X amount of time? I'm not sure exactly what kind of situation we're looking at here.
Stacy works at the Lantern House, Bethany.
Okay. Some are one and done, some are more regular. Okay. I think I kind of think that with like a one and done, it could be really powerful to motivate people through like social channels. I don't know if you guys use those. And shout outs. I think shout outs are important too. And that's a really, really hard one though, because usually, like in my experience, like a one and done, like they're there to do the job and then get out, right? Like they're there to volunteer and then they're like, okay, peace out. And so I guess like, what is your specific challenge there? Okay. Yeah. I'm gonna move this chat over here. So, yeah, engaging them to continue coming back. I think it's scary. I will say this, like it's scary going to a new place, a new place to volunteer. And so, I've had experiences where I've gone in to volunteer and nobody has acknowledged me. And so I'm just kind of wandering around looking lost. And so having really good processes to welcome your new volunteers and to like really just kind of praise them for being there. Like, we're so glad you're here. Thank you so much for coming. How can we make this, like, how do you have any questions? How can we make this a better experience for you? Because we we really need the help and we would love to have you back, right? So like just giving them the opportunity to address any concerns that they might have. In my experience, new volunteers are very shy, and it's hard to kind of like engage with them and get them to open up about why they're even there. They want to do it, right? They're there because they want to be doing it, but it's hard to engage them because it's new, it's a new experience. And I think that the thing that makes or breaks them from coming back is the experience while they're there. So if you could take a deeper look at that and say, okay, like, are we making this a comfortable environment? I know that it's hard because there's so much going on, and volunteers are desperately needed, but they're not always in the big picture, right? Like they're not like your day-to-day, okay. But even if it's something simple, like you have a greeter at the door that says, thank you so much for coming. Like, we're so glad you're here. And it could be another volunteer that's like more experienced and just says, okay, what questions do you have? Like, we're here to guide you. I think that would be a big thing, particularly in that kind of an organization where a lot of people just kind of come in and they're a little nervous. They don't know what's going on. They're just there to help, and sometimes the help isn't enough. Sometimes it's really hard to get in the door. And once they do, they just need a little assurance. Okay, for me, I can't get anyone that's interested in science, even in the College of Science. I think that's going to come down to your branding and your marketing, and really like, where are you being seen and where are you trying to recruit people, and having a deeper understanding of where those types of people live might be a good place to start. Does that help? Yeah. Yeah, you gotta find where they live, and then you gotta like appeal to them. You're welcome.
Okay. Thank you all so much for joining us today and for giving your time and energy to this topic. Thank you so much, Bethany. We appreciate you being here and for sharing your passion with us. You've built three amazing businesses, and I think we all learned a lot from you. I also want to thank our sponsors, who are Comcast and Wasatch Peaks, for helping to make these trainings happen. It's really important for us to get your feedback. So I will be sending out an email today. If Bethany wouldn't mind sharing her slides with me, I'll share them with you and also include a survey in that. And with that, I will go ahead and turn you back to your day. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.